All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott, formerly of Rankin Technical College, and as part of my YouTube channel, JPS-Jeff Teaches Programming, which you can find by either searching for that out on YouTube or putting in the URL you see above it. You'll find my one and only playlist with currently just under 50 videos on how to learn Python. I've gone through the gamut so far as simple Python, procedural Python, object-oriented Python, files with Python, and I'm into databases right now. And what I'd like to do, now I'm not going to do it right now, I'm going to build into it. All right, I'm going to use this Chinook database that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 records, 11 tables in it. All right, and I'm going to try to build eventually, hopefully, some kind of a system where people are going to be able to do CRUD operations in here. Now there's, again, 11 databases. For now, I'm only concentrating on this one. Employees. Table stores employee data. And really the only fields I'm caring about right now are, I'm not even putting in an ID, and we'll go over that in a bit, but the last name, the first name, and I think there's an email address in here. There is. So I'm doing the email, the first name, and the last name. And that's all I'm going to do for right now. Now, I'm going to write this 3 times. The first time I write this, all right, this is going to be a long lecture. It might have to be broken up into 2 lectures, but I'm going to do all this stuff very methodically and very procedurally. When I say procedurally, I'm only going to have a main, and I'm going to do everything inside of main. All right, then I'm going to go back and redo it and take all of the different CRUD operations and break them up into their own functions. Finally, I'm going to make an employees class and try to bring that all together. After I do that, then I'm going to probably bring in just the customers table. Maybe we'll use these entire tables so you can start seeing how these things fit together. And eventually, like I said, I'd like to bring in all 11 tables. So what I'm going to do is in here, in my Python course, I've got a folder called source files. There's nothing in there currently for databases. All right, so I'm going to make a folder for it. New folder, Python DB, which is often used when you're working with databases. So there it is. And as you can see, totally empty. I'm also going to go out to GitHub, create a new repository that I own, Python DB. And there it is. Now, as you know, there's currently nothing in it, but I am going to take this. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to go into my Python DB, even before I open it up inside of code, which I'm going to do. But I'm going to open Git Bash here. I'm going to paste in what I just grabbed. Python DB, there it is, Python DB. Oh, there's no Git, there's nothing in there that's Git. So let's get init. All right, I can't do a git add dot because there's really nothing to add yet. There, now I can double check, git remote -v, and there it is. So that's where everything is going to be placed. All right, so let's open up this folder and let's open it up with Visual Studio Code. There's nothing in there right now. All right, and I'm making 3 demos, so I'm going to call this one. Let's make a folder in here and let's call it Demo01. In fact, while we're at it, let's just make 2 more folders. We'll have a Demo2. Oops, let me get rid of that. All right, down here, we're going to make another folder called Demo2. And underneath that, we'll make yet another folder called Demo03. All right. So everything is going to be in here. Okay. So let's open this. And in here, I'm going to make a new file. I could do it there or here. But I'll just call this Demo01db.py. And there are going to be, you've been warned, a boatload in here, a boatload of comments that I'm going to put in. All right? Because I want people to be able to understand what we're doing here. So to start with, the Python standard library includes a module called SQLite3. This module contains the interface to work with SQLite databases. All right, there is no need to install DB Lite on your machine. Rather, just import the SQLite 3 module to work with it right out of the box. All right. So the reason I'm showing you that is the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to import SQLite 3, and you can see it knows it. Okay. All right. And as I said, I'm going to throw everything in here inside of a main. So def main. For now, I'm just going to write pass there. And there's the reason I'm doing that is so I can call main down here. Okay. All right. Now, I've broken this down into about 10 steps. So main will be broken down into about 10 different steps. All right. This is gray because I'm not using anything that's SQLite yet. So all right, so to start with, step 1, create a database connection. Like I said, I'm doing this as though you know little to nothing about what I'm doing here. So create a connection object to represent a database. In this case, the database will be called test1.db. It's just an arbitrary name I chose. There's nothing special about it. SQLite 3 has a method named connect. Within this connect method, the programmer can either pass in a file, as we will do, or make an in-memory database shown below, but commented out. Let's do this. We don't have to, but let's do this anyway. So there's step 1. All right. Executing this code will create the test1.db file in the current directory. Even if the file had already existed, we will not get an error if the code is run again. Finally, typically, the object is called con, or connection. We're going to call it con. All right, so this is step one. We're creating a database connection. So let's go down here and do that. So con equals SQLite3.connect test1.db. Okay, now, right now you'll notice this is gray. I'm not sure why. It says it's not accessed. All right, and here it says it's not defined. Well, I think that's because I didn't put a double quote there and a double quote there. That's probably why. There you go. All right, now I'm also going to show you, again, you can either pass in a file as we do in line 30, or make an in-memory database shown in line 31, but comment it out. All right, so I'm going to put it here, but I'm going to comment it out. This is if we wanted to make an in-memory database. The way you do that is you type in colon memory, colon. Why would you want an in-memory database? If it's small and it's something you're constantly going to be testing, it might run a little faster to do an in-memory database. All right, but I do want to show you this. If we look in here, this is our file. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run this program. All right, I'm going to run the program. And you'll notice it created the test1.db file. Now, I screwed up, sorry. So I'm going to remove it right away, because I want this to be under here. And it looked like it wasn't putting it there, and I'm not sure why. So let's do File, Save As. It's under Demo01. Well, it put it there, but I'm going to move it anyway. I wonder if I give it a path. Let's just do this. Cut. Paste. That's where I want it to be. I'm not sure why it's not going there. But what I did want you to understand, right there, what I did want you to understand is it did create the database. There's absolutely nothing in it right now. Nothing. All right? But we've gone through and we've done step number 1 here. I'm going to get rid of that too. Again, a lot of comments for really one line of code. All right? So let's do step 2. and that is to create a database cursor. Trying to be really, good, for lack of better words, about setting these things up in the same way. All right, so in here, a cursor lets the programmer know, I shouldn't say now, no, execute SQL commands. The programmer creates a cursor by executing the cursor function of the connection object. And since it's part of an object, it's really not a function. It's really the cursor method. Okay? All right, that's the first thing. Not done yet. The execute method of the cursor object is used to run SQL commands, as will be seen below. Finally, just like we said this here, typically the object is called either cursor, cur, or C. All right, so we used con, so we will name our connection con, and we will name our cursor C. All right. So I want to come in here and I want to do this. I'm going to say C equals con.cursor. Okay? So that's what we did right there. And I've given you the comments that go along with it. Now, I can put a comment there that says, we hear something like this. Able to connect to SQLite and create new database. Okay? In fact, let's go in here. I don't know why it's not putting it in here, but I am going to remove this one more time. So I'm going to delete. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to save this. All right, and I'm going to run the program again. Notice, able to connect to SQLite and create new database, and there it is. All right. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to create a table so we've got something inside of that database. All right, that's what we're going to do next. That will be step 3 in just a minute. We will be coming in there to create a database table. So I'll even put that in. So it'll be step 3. Create a database table. Now, before we do this, I want to explain to you the SQL3 data types. All right? So why am I doing this first? Well, I'm doing this first because when I create the table, I'm going to be using these data types. And I thought it'd be nice for you to know what the heck they are. So SQLite 3 data types. And there's basically 5 of them. All right, there are actually a few more, but the ones that are going to be used virtually 100% of the time will be null, and null means unknown. There is integer, which is whole numbers. There is real, which are typically numbers with a decimal portion. There is text, which are basically strings. And finally, there's something called blob, which is actually an acronym for binary, let's put it in like we did the rest, binary large object. Example for images. Okay, so those are the ones you're going to use virtually all the time. What you do not have in this language, for example, what you do not have, first of all, there is no Boolean type. Rather, you use an integer where 0 is false and 1 is true. There is no date or time or date time data type. Rather, you use text, and the date time functions will work with text. All right, so there's your data types. And now we're going to come in and create our database table. All right, so using the cursor object, we will now create an employees table. In this initial example, the employees table will have only the following 3 fields. Also, fields are called their fields, they're called attributes, they're called we'll leave it like that. I'm sure they're called other stuff too. So it'll have in it 1 first name, 2 last name, and 3 email. Okay. Okay. These are also called columns. All right. So AKA also known as columns or attributes. All right. Note below. I wonder if I do it like this. Please note that below I am using triple, double quotes. In other words, double quote, double quote, double quote, double quote, double quote, double quote. For wrapping many of the SQL commands. This is also known as a docstring. Again, the benefit is that it allows the programmer to write string values over multiple lines. Okay, so again, we're on step 3 now. We came in, we established our connection, we created a cursor. Now we're creating a database table. We're going to attempt to do so. All right, so, and again, there's many ways of doing this. This is how I did it. I called it create employees table query, and I set it equal to docstring, double quote, double quote, double quote. All right. And I've got create table if not exists employees. Oops, try that again. All right. Now, in English, this means create this table in this database, because that's the one I'm using, called employees, but don't recreate it if it already exists. All right. And it's going to have those same three fields I told you about before. First name, which will be a text field. And we're not going to allow nulls. Last name, which will also be a text field. And again, we will not allow nulls. And finally, email, which will be a text field, and we will allow nulls. Okay? Not everybody has an email address. Okay? So there that is. Now this is kind of hard to read. I did it like this, but then later what I did was I took the whole thing and I moved it way the hay over like this. I think that's a little easier to read. You may agree with me, you may not, but this is the way I'm going to do it. All right. Another comment. The SQL execute, how about this? The SQL command to run will go into the execute method of the cursor object. This execute method is used to help run SQL or structured query language commands. All right. So c.execute create employees table query, telling it to run that. And when we're done, we'll do another print that just says here, employees table was successfully created. All right. So far, taking it from the top, we've come in here, we created our connection. All right. Then we created a cursor. Now we're attempting to create a table. All right. Now when you look at this, this is a command. I shouldn't say that. This is a table declaration. We're saying this query, which actually is a command, it's a create table command. It's going to create a table called employees that has three fields in it. First name, last name, and email. They're all text fields. First name and last name cannot be null. Email can be null. All right. So we then execute that command, and then we say employees table was successfully created. All right. Now you'll notice we already have this, but if I run the program again, I don't get any errors. I just get able to connect, employees table was successfully created. That's good. That's what we wanted to do. All right. But now the next thing that we want to do is we want to go in and insert a record into that table. All right, let me clear this. All right. So we've gone through so far step 1 to create our connection, step 2 to create our database cursor, and step 3 to create a database table. So now we're going to have, here's a surprise, step 4. We're still in main here. All right. So step 4, insert new record into employees table. All right. So let me close this. I just want a little more room to write. There we go. To insert a new employee record, we use the insert into followed by the table name with values command. In the example below, the question marks are used as placeholders for the query. And I'm going to explain that momentarily. All right. So I'm going to come in here and do this. I'm going to say insert employee query equals docstring. All right, and we're going to put in here insert into employees, employees, first name, last name, email, values, question mark, question mark, question mark. All right, now what the heck is this? Well, it's a query, and this first, whatever we put in here will be used to fill in the first name. Whatever we put in here will be used to fill in the last name, and whatever we put in here will be used to fill in the email. So that's the query. So now actually insert the data into the employees table. All right. Employee 1 is the record number 1 we are inputting into said table. So employee 1 equals, and I've just made this up. I mean, there's nothing special about the name or anything. I could have put my own name in there, but I used Janet Dawson, Janet D at gmail.com. So Janet is going in this right here, Janet, that is this question mark. Dawson is this question mark, and janetd@gmail.com is this question mark. All right, now I haven't executed the query yet. All right, so what I have to do to execute this is I have to say c.execute, but when I do this, I need to give it both the name of the query, so insert employee query, and the name of the record to insert, which is employee 1. All right. So I can put another print in here that says something like record employee 1 inputted into employees table. Again, if you don't like what I'm using here, you can put whatever you want in there, of course. All right. Now, we're not done yet. Okay. Why? Well, after you create the table and add the record to it, you need to commit the changes to the database. There's different ways of doing it. I'm trying to show you right now what I consider to be the most straightforward way of doing it. So again, after creating table employees and adding record employee 1 to this table, we must commit the changes to the database. For that, we use the commit method of the connection object. So in other words, we put here con dot, and watch when I start to type in commit. In fact, it's right here. Okay. Now we're done, but let's query the database to verify that the record is there. All right. So we're going to query the database to verify that record employee 1 indeed does exist in the employees table. All right. So how are we going to do that? Well, a couple lines of code. All right. So what we'll do, well, basically it's just one line of code. All right. No, I guess it's a couple. Let's do this. We're going to say c.execute. Now I can put this in here like this, like we've been doing. And I can say select star from employees, totally fine, and then end it like that. So it works, but there's really not a whole, this isn't a lot that we're typing. So I'm going to put this all on the same line. And to do that, I'm only going to use single quotes, not a doc string, because it's not over multiple lines. All right, so we committed. We're going to query. All right, and now we're going to put, I'm going to say this. So I'm going to do another print, and I'm going to say the results are, okay, and I'm going to run a command here. So I'm going to print here c.fetch1. Now, since you probably don't know what that means, I want to put a comment here to explain that. All right. There are 3 different fetch methods that can be used to get database records. One of those methods is fetch1, which gets the next row in what's called the result set. Okay? So I'm going to print that right there. Let's see if this works. All right, we'll have all the same comments we had before, but then we'll also have the results are, and then it should show us Janet Dawson, all right, janetd@gmail.com. So file, save all, and let's run this. And there you can see it. The results are Janet Dawson, janetd@gmail.com. All right, let's see where we are for time here. All right, I'm at 41 minutes, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do step 5, which is the next step here. All right, where I want to insert multiple records in at one time. And when we get done with that, I'm going to take a break. Don't worry about that. We'll fix that right now. There we go. So this is step 5. And it is insert 4 more records into the employees table. All right. I guess I didn't. There we go. All right. So what I want to do is I want to insert multiple records into the employees table all at the same time. I could do it by coming through and doing 4 of these queries, but that is kind of a waste. And what if I have 100 of these? Do I really want to do it like that? The answer is no. So I'm going to come in here and do it like this. I'm going to create. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and create a list called, we'll call it 4 more records. All right, so 4 more records equals, and it's going to be a list. All right, so we're going to put it over multiple lines. And I just made names. All right, I mean, there's nothing special about these names. All right, and I use single quotes most often in here. You can use single or double in almost anything you do. So this is Robert Smith, and his email will be rsmith@yahoo.com. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this 3 times and then just make changes. So next we'll have Karen Jones, and that'll be kjones@gmail.com. Next will be Mark. You don't have to line them up like I'm doing here. It just makes it easier for me. Mark Black. And that will be mblack@yahoo.com. Finally, we'll have Mary Brown. And that'll be mbrown@gmail.com. You'll notice that I've got Gmails and Yahoos. We'll be working with that later when we do updates. All right? So that's that. I haven't done anything with it yet. I've just created an empty, a list with that stuff in it. All right. So I want to insert the 4 records above into the employees table. So rather than executing the insert query above once for each new record, in other words, 4 different insert statements, and really I should be saying insert into. All right. So rather than doing that, we will perform what's known as a bulk insert operation in a single query using a cursor's execute many function. Now you need an execute many because if you did just an execute here, it's trying to put one thing in. We want to put in 4. All right. Now I should also mention here the execute many method of the cursor object takes 2 arguments. That is an SQL query and the records to update. And again, I want you to understand when you do this, there is more than one way of doing this. I am showing you a way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the only way. All right? Take a break for just a second here. All right, having problems with my power cord for some reason, so that was why I had to take a break for just a second here. So, c.execute many, and I'm going to say insert into employees values question mark, question mark, question mark, and those values are going to come from former records, which, oh good gravy, which now putting it here should mean that up above it's no longer grayed out. There you go. All right. Okay, so again, just like before, I want to commit the change. So I'm going to say con.commit commit. All right. And I'll put a print message in there that says 4 records successfully inserted. See below. Something like that. Now, I want to print all 5 records. All right, I want to print all 5 of the records. So I showed you before the fetch one, but I'm going to show you the entire fetch library, or whatever you want to call it. So this will be the fetch method. And then this will be the functionality. So we have fetch 1, which you already saw. But we will also have fetch many with n there. And we will have a fetch all. Now you may be able to already start to be able to figure out what these mean. And that's fine. So this method will get the next row in the result set. It returns 1 record if it exists. Otherwise, it returns none. All right, then we've got fetch many. And fetch many, let's make sure I'm still taping here. I am. And fetch many, this method will return a specified number of rows or records i.e. the n in the parentheses. And it returns those as a list. If there are no records, it returns, again, none. Actually, it doesn't. It returns an empty list. And I know for sure, because when I was doing this first, I made some mistakes, and for a while that's what I was returning. So this method returns the remaining rows as a list. If there are no rows, so this returns all rows as a list. If there are no rows, it returns an empty list. Okay, so those are your 3 fetch methods right there. So what I'm going to use right here, first I'm going to say c.execute, select star from employees. So what this will do, so first get all employee records. That's what this is doing. All right. Now we're going to try to make it so you can understand. So I'm going to print here using a fetch all to print all 5 employee records. Now that'll print them, but they won't be formatted at all. Let's do a little bit of formatting in here. So I'm going to say for row in rows, print, and we use an F string here, name, row 0, row 1. That'll be the first name, so that'll print the first name and the last name. And then we'll put a \T and we'll say email, and we'll have in here row 2, if I did that right. All right. All right, so file, save all, let's clear this, and let's run the program. So this is where we were able to connect. This is when the table was created. These are when the records were inputted. There's the first record. Here's the fetch, and you'll notice that one's in there twice. And it's because I ran the insert command twice. So how do I fix that? I come back in here and I remove the database. This is why you might want to use an in-memory database. So now if I run it, what you're going to notice, able to connect, created, all right, employees table, there it is, and there are the 5 records. All right, so that is the first 5 out of 10 steps that I wanted to go through with you. All right, next, step 6, which I'm going to start in the next lecture. All right, because this was step 5. So next will be step 6. All right, and when I do step 6, right now we've been doing select star and we've been getting everybody. Let's just get some of the employee records. All right, and I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, that will be in the next part of this that I'm working on right now. Whoops, and somehow I lost that. All right, so that'll be 6. Then we'll do an update. And we'll look at 2 ways of doing an update. Then we'll do a delete, and then we'll talk about error handling. All right, so let me do a file, save all here. All right, because I must be close to an hour. And as you can see, I am. So I'm going to stop here and we'll pick it up in part 2 shortly.